All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to our live AMA with Solomon Kahn. I just want to say welcome to everybody here that's here live, but also anybody that's joining us on the recording later. We're really happy that you're here and you're spending your time with us here today. Solomon is an amazing guest. I'm going to introduce him here shortly. I just want to give a quick note about our community that's hosting this, dataGOATs. So datagoats.org. If you enjoy this AMA, go check us out and join the community. Aside from AMAs, we do other events, contests, that actually have real prizes and stuff like that. So data viz contests and things like that. So it's a great place to connect with like-minded analytics professionals. So come join us there. Our guest today, who I'm really excited is here, and thank you for being here, is a longtime data leader and founder. Has recently created the consulting company reportingapplications.com, which I'm sure we'll get into what that is all about. Solomon's also been the leader, rather founder of Delivery Layer and a prior prior data VP roles. Having a hard time finding my words this morning,
All
apparently.
good. All good,
uh,
Zach.
at companies like Helium 10, Nielsen. So Solomon, thank you for being here, being patient with my word jumble. Really excited to have you. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want to tell people before we get into
No,
artificial
no,
intelligence?
no, no. That's good. That's good. I'm excited. We could just jump right in.
Awesome, cool. Let me just see who we've got here and see if we got any questions coming in. If not, I have some, so we can get into those. Let's see here what we got. Sometimes it's slow to get people to come on, especially early on a Tuesday morning.
People
Early
still
for
doing
some
holiday
people.
shopping.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got some people on. No questions coming in on the LinkedIn side. Let's just check the Data Goats community. I know some people were talking about dropping some questions in there. All right. Well, I'll just ask. I'm just going to get out there right in front with a big one. What's your, if you had a number one piece of advice for anybody trying to transition from like an individual contributor, kind of an analyst role, or maybe a data scientist role into leadership? What is that kind of number one piece of advice that you have for them?
All right. This is an interesting question. So I'll instead of the one piece of advice, I'll share the one thing that people most often get wrong about this transition
Perfect.
is that, and then I'll go on to share a little bit of advice. People think that you get directly promoted to manager typically, right? And so you're sort of working as an IC on the team, you're senior IC, and you got a 5-person team, and then the next moment you're managing the team. That that rarely happens. That's almost never the way that it works. In general, there's an intermediary step where you're managing a junior person or you're managing some interns or you're doing some things that are sort of an in between try it out type period where people can see your actual leadership skills as it relates to managing someone. And a lot of data people don't, and that's an easy thing to, it's very tough to say I want to lead a team. It's much easier to say, I want to manage one person. I'm not trying to have any big type of org changes. Manager, you've got 7 data people under you. I'm a senior one. It probably makes sense for you for succession planning, etc. I'm interested in being a manager one day. Is it possible for me to manage 1 or 2 of these 7 people on a day-to-day basis, and just as a way to develop my skill set and move in that direction for my career, right? Um, that's reasonably easy to say yes to if you have the skills and if people like you and if they see you as a good successor to leading the team. And if not, then they'll tell you the reasons why. So that's number one. Is actually, it's not about like becoming a leader. It's like oftentimes how do you get to the intermediate step, and then from the intermediate step, it's way clearer for how to become a leader. Generally, when your manager leaves, is the assuming
Right.
that people like your manager, or when your manager gets promoted, unless you're in a much larger organization where things open up in different teams. So you're in a smaller organization, you're more limited. Your bigger organization, you're going to have more opportunities, but have that intermediate step. The thing that's important to realize, I think, for other, but back to your original question, which is what's the one thing that is important for people to realize as they want to get into leadership? Leadership is a different job than being a data person. And so there have been many times where I've had people on my team that were really spectacular individual contributor data people that I did not ever see a future that they were going to go into leading a team, because the specific if being a manager is 80% different than being an IC or 70% different than being an IC, it's your capability in that 70% of the other skills that are going to be really important. And so it's not about just being the best data person. It's about, do you have the skills needed to be a successful manager? And that is something that you need to focus on if you want to transition into leadership.
Yeah, and that's it. An interesting. It kind of had me thinking about something else. So like you have VP roles on your resume, and in those VP roles, I'm sure you had some P&L responsibility. How did that kind of, you're speaking about like, different differences in like doing the technical work and then doing, the manager work. How for instance is having something like P&L responsibility or being in charge of kind of the larger strategy for your part of the organization. How does that kind of change your perspective of like, analytics kind of more broadly, like, not just thinking about the technical problems to solve, like, but just the kind of analytics, feel more broadly. But also, if you were in other roles within that organization, how does that kind of change your view of the organization?
Yeah. So let me give a little bit of history about like how some of this stuff happens, because I think it's helpful to understand what my answer is going to be there. Um, I only had P&L responsibility as a data leader because I worked in a business where the business was data,
Mm.
and like at Nielsen or in the current jobs that I'm doing, right? I'm leading companies, so I have P&L responsibility, but it's a data company. And so it's unrealistic in many cases for data leaders to get P&L responsibility in businesses where it wouldn't make sense for you to have P&L responsibility as a data person. So that's number one. I don't think most data people, when you get to a certain level at a big enough company, there's an expectation of being able to have sort of like experiences that you get exposed to and opportunities across an organization to sort of help boost your foundation as they put you to leadership. Those are like called academy companies. So there's some degree of, if you're a data leader moving up the ranks in an academy company, it's very possible that they'll give you an opportunity to lead something and own some commercial business as a data leader. But most data leaders are not going to be in that situation. Um, and then on the other side of that, the in addition to the reason that I sort of talked about having it be a data company, I also started my career in finance before the days of data science,
Mm.
and I was a securities analyst, and I worked my way up to VP at a Wall Street company, and I was a business person,
Yeah.
and so a lot like I took the CFA exams, like a lot of the skills that I learned early on uh, helped give me the foundation that it made sense that I could be in a role of business leader in addition to just data leader. And
Sure.
the reason I think that's important context is because the best way to be an executive or to get to a specific place that you want to go is to have the skills that if you were someone outside, you'd be like, this is the kind of person that I want to be in that role. And then you become that person. So
Mhm.
if it's business expertise, if it's marketing expertise, if it's a specific industry, whatever it is, you can reverse engineer. It's like, okay, what are some of the things that I might need to know if I want to have a role like this? And then you should learn them or get some experiences with them.
It's great advice. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Shachar has a good question here, which I'm throwing up on the screen. Who's the best data engineer you've ever worked with? And maybe if you don't have a specific person, but if you do, we'd love to shout them out. And then what made them so good?
All right. I'm not I've worked with a lot of great data engineers. I don't wanna throw shade by not mentioning them. So that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But like there were a couple of like crazily good data engineers at Nielsen, at Helium 10, also some really good ones. Some of the people that were on my team at Paperless Post have gone on to like very senior roles that like other big companies. So they like I've thankfully worked with a lot of great data engineers. But I will very specifically answer the question of what made them so good. And the thing that makes those data engineers so good, but also this is sort of my point of view on what makes any data person so good, is their ability to independently make a difference in the company and like connect the dots around what's really important and why they're doing what they're doing. Um, which is a super broad definition, I know. But interestingly, I did this project and I spoke to almost 100 data leaders, ranging from managing a 5-person team to like chief data officers of publicly traded companies. And 90% of them gave that answer to what does great data work look like? It is people independently making a difference. And what that means is that if you just get told what to do, people don't see you as having that big of a difference, because it's like anybody who knew SQL could take what I said and do that, right? Or anybody that knew the basic technical skills. As
Right.
opposed to if you're independently the one that's making things happen in your company, if someone if you come up and you say that oh, nobody told me this, but I noticed that we're trying to launch this new product, but the way that our data is structured and organized, we want to have data out to customers within minutes, but there's no way we can do this outside of a daily batch process the way it is right now, and we need to re-architect things. Or if you're the data engineer that says, I was listening to you know, the way that our data is structured right now, I know we've been talking about some M&A for these 2 or 3 things. If we're gonna pull in these data sets to include in our core product, we need to make these changes now. Otherwise, we'll sign this deal with the company and it's gonna be another 4 months before we're gonna be able to integrate their data. Those are the kind of things that if you can independently understand about the business context and then bring it into your data work and just make things happen, those are the things that make great data people.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Shout out to it, my last manager, actually Scott. So for this piece of advice, and it ties really nicely to what you were saying. And he told me if you want to get promoted, I was a business analyst at the time in supply chain strategy and transformation work. He said, don't wait to have work assigned to you. Go out there and find problems, and then lift them up, get approval. Because you'll probably need to get some approval to do the work, especially because you're an individual contributor. You might not have some of the freedom to just kind of pick and choose projects. I still may not have that opportunity to do that, even in roles higher up than that. But be the one that finds the problem that needs to be solved, present a possible hypothesis or solution to that problem, and then take that to leadership and say, "Hey, here, I found this." And that is one of the fastest things that he said to getting promoted. I think he's right. I think it speaks exactly to what you're saying. The people that stand out are the ones that are actively going out there and finding
Yeah.
problems to solve rather than waiting for it to come to them.
Let me actually give you one more on top of that. Um, you are the person that's closest to the data and in what you do, right? There's a whole category of things that nobody could ever tell you about because you're the only one that's ever seeing the data in this way. If you don't have anything, if you don't have a point of view on based on the data that I'm seeing, here's what I think I can do that's going to make the biggest difference in the company, that is kind of a problem. And maybe there's other things from a company perspective that overshadow other things that you're seeing, and so it's obvious that you're not necessarily setting the roadmap or the agenda for the next couple quarters because of this other big thing, that's fine. But you should have a strong point of view, because you're the only one that could have a strong point of view based on your context, and your context is the data. So you should have a lot to say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yep, absolutely. We've got some good questions coming in here. So Matthew McGinnis says, so let's show it up on the screen here. What advice would you give someone who's been a manager of data and BI teams for a handful of years and starting to think about what to move to a director or senior leader position sometime in the next few? So kind of the difference between a manager to like a director, kind of like executive type of role.
Cool. All right. This is a great question. In my experience, the difference between manager and director is the level of responsibility that you need to take on in order, in terms of like the wider context. Um, and so let me give you an example. As a manager, you might not, and as I say this, I've got a theoretical framework around these sort of titles that map to a whole bunch of actual different titles in the real world. Sometimes, like, titles and data are all over the place. So when I say this is director level work, it could be manager level work somewhere. It could be SVP level
Right.
work somewhere else, right? There's no standard leveling of data people. So to me, when I think about director, I'm typically thinking manager of managers. You've got or manager that also has sort of like more senior level in the business. If you're a smaller company, like, you lead the function. So you're either leading the function or you're leading managers. Now, sometimes you'll have a small data team with a manager who also leads the function. A lot of times people like that will be called head of data, to reflect that they're not really an executive level because it's a small team, but also they're in charge of the whole thing. Um, so and I think in these situations, really the difference between manager and director or VP is how tied in you are to the executive leadership at the company. Do they see you as a peer, or do they see you as someone managing a team? Like, do they want you in the planning meetings as a peer? Do they want you leading the function or not? And at what scope? So that to me is the biggest difference. And the skills there are, frankly, it's a lot of it is just general business acumen and business context. Managers typically are not as experienced with that as directors, and so that's a lot of difference. Again, the titles don't mean much, but like, um, that's sort of a good way that I like to think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. A good way to look at it for sure.
And let me give you a specific answer. Also, Matthew, for how, if you were a manager and you want to move up to director, how do you do it? You need to get all of the other directors and VPs to want you to be a director. That's
Mm.
that. That is what it is. Do they see that you are a crucial person in the meetings? Are you a trusted advisor to them? Do they see you as a peer, or do they see you not as a peer and as someone who is at a more junior level? And that is the ball game. And so that's like the real ball game, not the whatever random stuff people will tell you online.
Right. And will they advocate for you when when it comes time for the interview and people start throwing your name around? Are they going to be the ones advocating for you or not? I think that's part of it.
It's not even an interview, because a lot of, and it also, it depends on the organization. In big companies where you have an org chart, you generally know who is next in line for various different opportunities of your manager. Like, and just, if you're a manager and there are 10 other managers, you should have a sense of where are you in comparison to some of the other managers? Like if a director left, would they say, obviously it's going to be Zach that is going to take over? And what are the projects and steps and other things you can do along the way to increase your capabilities to where it's sort of obvious that you're ready to get onto that next level? So that's
Nice.
that's what it is. And then moving to another company is trying to frame your skill set again similar to what they're looking for. But if get in general, it's harder to move up a level when you move companies.
Mhm.
It's not always as hard to move titles at the same seniority level across companies. So people do that. It's like, oh, I'll go from manager to director, but it's the same team size. But the title
Sure.
changes, and then the next job that you get after is director to director with bigger scope. So some people do that as well.
Yeah, a couple different paths you could take there for sure. Bill. Oh, hey, Bill. I actually used to work with Bill at my last company, so good to see you, Bill. How is it? How important is it to be a good storyteller on what data indicates to take steps to leadership? I feel like that's a big one.
Yeah. Um, it's a bit, so it is big. And I think in some ways, storyteller is a great word, and in some ways, it's a terrible word because um, with a really what you need to do is you need to connect the information to the people that need to know the information in a way that they're going to care about, right? If that's in a way that they're going to understand. If that you don't need like when you hear storytelling, it's like, oh, I got to make a whole story and I got to do this and I got to do that. It's like it's an involved thing. Ideally, when you have a good relationship with someone and you have an established understanding of the business that you've built together and we talk about things, most of the conversations that I have with execs are not these long stories. It's, oh, obviously we've been working on trying to reduce churn for all of this time for obvious reasons. We all know why. We all know why it's we don't need to make some whole big story. And in fact, so many data people try to tell the story of how they figured things out when they come up with an insight. And it is totally it lands flat. Nobody is interested in the long story. They're interested in the TLDR. Okay, so what should we do? And yes, you instead of like 35 slides and then of like your journey of data discovery and then 3 slides of conclusion at the end, which is kind of what they teach you in school. Instead, it should be a 3 or 4 slide deck and then 30 pages of appendix, where if people ask you a question on something, you go to that specific slide. So for that reason, I find that yes, storytelling is important. But you've got to really what you've got to do is connect what this person cares about with the thing that you saw. 75% of it is not based on what you do in the room. It's based on the relationship and the trust that that person has in you. That's based on all the other things that you've built over time. And so you can't just like get in there and tell some amazing story and it takes away all of the other impression that those people have on you. The impression it heavily influences what people think about what you're going to tell them. And so that's why I think that data storytelling is important. Um, but you've got to tell the right story in the right way. And that story is oftentimes not what people think about when they hear storytelling.
Mm, that's interesting. Yeah, that's I think an interesting perspective on that for sure. Speaking of storytelling, Maggie, who is known as the data storyteller, hey Maggie, who is also an our AMA guest for next month. So little preview. Thanks Maggie for hopping on this one. What motivated your switch from working for established companies to being a founder? This is a question that was on my mind too. Maggie's reading my mind here. It's a good one.
Sure. It's a great question. So my company restructured and I ended up in a role that I was not interested in. So I
Mm,
left and I was going to get another data job, but I had had this idea for a really long time of something that I wanted to build. And I felt like this was the time to do it. And so I went off and I built it. And maybe this is subjective based on my own personal experience versus what is like I think there's ways to be a data person that don't involve this, but most of the data jobs and that I've ever had have been about building things, even within companies, and have been about like really transforming and moving things forward, as opposed to strictly sort of like maintenance data jobs, which are, hey, run these reports and you're technical so you can run them, but you're not really gonna innovate much or do much. So for me, I've spent my whole career, even when I was in finance, building things and doing things. And so it was not as huge of a stretch as you might think to go off and build something myself. I've just spent my entire career building things. So that's it. And then frankly, and people don't talk about this, there were a lot of personal things going on in my life previously where even if I had the most amazing idea, like I had young kids, family stuff going on, like I was just not in a
Right.
place to start something. And then at a different period, I was. And so I don't think it's not always some one big thing where, oh, I had an idea, I had to do it. It's like, yes, I had an idea, I had to do it. And then other things in my life meant that it wasn't a good time to do it, and so I didn't do it. And then at a certain point, the stars aligned, and that's how I
Yeah.
ended up being a founder.
And sometimes it kind of gets, kind of uh, put on you kind of spontaneously. Like, well, I either, I got laid off or I got restructured. Like in your situation, you get restructured in a role you're not super happy with. It's like, I think it's time to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What I've found is that some of this stuff is very tough to plan out, and it'll when people describe their career to you, and especially, I hope this is helpful. I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, and leaders have this story that always makes sense when you tell it backwards. But trust me, nobody knows what things are going to be like moving forwards, and it's always like that. And so there's this, and this is a general social media thing, as I'm sure everybody knows. There's selective, like people are selective in what they share online, and they
Yeah.
share it in ways that generally make them look good.
Right.
Not
Of course.
everybody, and sometimes you find people that you trust who are just like lay everything out there and say, hey, like here's what worked, here's what didn't work. But most of the stuff that you see is heavily curated. And
Yeah.
so to anybody who thinks that there's a straightforward path and easy answer to a lot of these career questions, there's not. It's messy, and you figure it out as you go along.
Yeah, I've personally had that experience where I look back at my career and I'm like, that was an interesting way to get there. Like so far, I obviously have much more time to go. But it's funny because it's like, okay, I can go back and tell the really polished, concise story about why I took this step to get there. And at the time I did. I was in that position. I was like, okay, well, here's the next step I want to take. And then I can kind of, put all the dots together and say, yeah, that's how I got here. But it's funny because a lot of the things that ended up working out really well, like, oh, this skill ended up translating really nicely to this. And it wasn't a clean path. It wasn't linear. It was all over the place. I did bunches of different things and wore a bunch of different hats, and it got me to where I'm at today. But I think for a lot of us, it's not linear, and you end up there, and you can say that it's like, yeah, it was this master plan I had all along, but the reality is it's probably a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Actually, on the topic of starting your own company, so like you talked about the motivation for getting there, like why you made that leap. What advice would you give somebody who's thinking about making that leap? Because there's a lot of like, and I've seen a lot of it. I actually had a conversation with a guy about an hour and a half before we hopped on this call who's about to go through a job transition, and he was talking about freelancing. And I'm like, hey, I think it's great if you can do it. It's hard because it's kind of a race to the bottom, but if you can start your own like consistent side gig, I think it's a great idea to just diversify your income, give yourself kind of a contingency plan. I think a lot of people are thinking about doing that kind of thing. So even if it's just a side hustle, if it's not a full-time leap into starting your own company, like what advice do you have for somebody that's kind of thinking about making that leap?
Yeah. Um, I would say, so I've got a couple of thoughts on this. And a lot of times these situations are not clearly one is better than the other. It's that different paths have different benefits and drawbacks. So I never really had side gigs, but I had side projects, if that makes sense. So like I do conference talks, I did some civic data work, I did interesting open source things so that like I was part of the community, but I did it in a way where there wasn't any external money stuff involved. And
Sure.
I think that that was actually pretty important for me from a career growth perspective. I think that people, if you want to grow in your company, I think you are generally better off taking all of the extra time that you were going to spend trying to make money somewhere else and just use it trying to spend to try to make money at your company. And I think financially, that's also oftentimes the better decision. Like, it's building up a side hustle to make $1,000 a month versus like actually getting that promotion that's going to get you 20 or $30,000 extra a year. It makes a difference. And then also the more like spending that time focused on your job, performing better at your job gives you better internal network, external network when people leave. There's benefits to being just like really, really good at what you're doing and having that be the main focus. Again, I had side projects. It's also a little bit different for leadership than it is for ICs. Like, but even then, if you're just imagine this: if you're the marketing analyst who is working with a CMO to try to figure out how to like hit their numbers for the year. And the CMO is on a path to getting fired because the numbers are really tough to hit. And they see you or they know you're futzing around outside on some random freelance side project. They're not going to feel good about that. They're just
Mm.
not. Now on the opposite side, having some freelance side projects, one of the good things about freelancing is that you own a business, like you get the full life cycle from sales to marketing to everything. And so
Right.
having that experience is good. And then also companies are like careers are not the same as they used to be, and so having being able to go and generate some income independently as a safety in case you get laid off or in case something happens at your job is also not. So this is one of those situations where I think that there are pluses and minuses to each of them, and only you can decide in your situation what is the best. I find that the too many people though think that like, oh, side project, make money on the side project is automatically better than just focusing on your job. And I think in most cases that's not true.
Mm.
Um, which is a hot take, I think. But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it kind of is because I think there's a lot of people that encourage it, but I think that's a compelling argument maybe why it's not the best approach. And I think there is certainly something to that, especially if you're in a organization that's relatively stable and has expressed interest in you've shared interest with your leadership that you want to potentially move up, and they've shared the interest in developing you as an employee. It absolutely makes sense. I mean, I think somebody was talking about that with their job at Meta, right? Like Meta employees command pretty high salaries, right? So like for them, they had a side hustle, but pausing their side hustle actually made a lot of sense for them because if they moved up a rung on the ladder, then they're now making 50 grand more a year or more, or whatever it is. So yeah, I think there's certainly a case that you can make in either direction. I think to your point, if your aspiration is, hey, I want to own my own business and I want to get that experience, then having the experience in building something on your own in your nights and weekends time totally makes sense. But
yeah,
yeah, to your point, especially if you're working for somebody who could be on the chopping block like that, it doesn't look good. It's not a great look.
let me be clear. There's no if you're working for someone that's on the chop like I'm not gonna say I don't want to go and say every. 80% of executives have numbers that they need to hit, and if they
Right.
don't hit those numbers, they're in big trouble.
It's
So
true.
so this is the rule, not the exception. In
Right.
general, you're supporting people whose jobs are on the line based on how good of a job you do or not as a data person. Some companies abstract this away in ways where like you have like it's not as true.
Mhm.
But i- you should better to assume that it is true for the most part. And most data interest There's another thing. Most data work, most of the most interesting data work is actually at big companies, because small
Mm.
companies don't have the scale. Like, if the idea of data is we can help you make better decisions, you make better decisions. Like, if you think about, if you help a company improve by 10%, right? If you're at a big tech company and you're helping a $1 trillion company improve by 10%, then you just added $100 billion. If you help a, you know, $10 million company improve by 10%, you've added a million. So the scale of where data can improve, you end up facing like the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges at larger companies. And that's why a lot of times, even going into freelancing, those types of companies are generally not hiring freelancers for their most interesting data problems. They might hire big consulting companies, but they're
Sure.
generally not hiring IC freelancers. IC freelancers are typically playing in a totally separate place. Not always, but typically. And so that's another thing I think people don't always realize. Yes, you can certainly do freelance consulting, but a lot of the most interesting stuff that they're also going to pay you the most for is actually inside the big companies. Um,
Yeah.
Data leadership consulting is a little bit not it like is like a little bit of an X factor here, because people will pay for expert advice inside bigger companies. But for ICs, if you want to do freelance IC work, again, you know, doesn't always you're not always going to get the most interesting things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and that's I think a healthy reminder for somebody who has not been at the executive level like myself. Kind of some of the pressure that those folks face. Like sometimes you just don't see that. At some of the levels down a little bit lower, you just don't see that kind of pressure and understanding the reality of some of those positions. That is the rule, kind of more than the exception, like you said. This is an interesting question. I'm going to do my best to parse this because it's a hot topic. Obviously, I actually just posted about it yesterday. I made a meme, and some people may have even misread it a little bit, but that's okay. What's the most effective approaches for scaling AI capabilities across an enterprise? I think specific to data is fair to say in this case. Selecting high impact use cases to developing cross functional ownership and building kind of an AI ready culture, thinking things like documentation and semantic layers and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure is where we're going with that. So what's your perspective of where we're going with this AI stuff? Like how do you scale it? How do you implement it? Like what's a good strategy for that?
Yeah. I think that AI projects are no different than any other data project, in that it's very the most common failure mode for data projects and data teams is building something that people don't really need.
Hmm.
That's sort of a nice to have, but doesn't really solve problems. And when you hear about all of the failures of AI implementations, which, by the way, I think most of the numbers there are not accurate in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But that is the most common failure mode. And so, as a data leader, I flip it, and it's a little bit easier on the outside, actually, as a sort of like consultant and like selling software. Nobody just randomly buys things or does these projects unless there's a real need to do them. That where they come in. If you have a team, it's easier to use them in ways that you don't really need, that are sort of like nice to have. And so I flip it around totally. Instead of saying, here's a solution, now what's the problem? Which is the framing of that question, right? How do we build AI capabilities? It's like, who needs don't build AI
Right.
capabilities. You probably, if that's what people are telling you to do, then you don't need to do it.
Hmm.
Instead, if someone's saying, we've got 1,000 people in an operations team, and it's taking them 2 weeks to manually crunch this data, and our customers are asking for that data in 2 days, and we can only get it to them in 2 weeks, but we think AI can solve this. Yes, then go build an AI system to do that. But don't just build AI. You're just going to get crushed. Nobody's asking for AI. They're asking for solving a specific problem. So go do that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it becomes the old if you're a hammer, everything becomes a nail kind of situation. It
Yeah.
becomes one of those. It's like AI is at the top of everybody's mind, but if you're just looking for that, that's just the answer, becomes the answer to everything. Or it starts becoming
Yeah.
something where you're not actually trying to solve problems, you're just trying to implement the new hot thing, and that never works well.
Totally. And be very open about what people on the opposite side of the business should expect and what the problems are going to be.
Mhm.
Because there's
Setting
always
expectations.
problems. You've got to set the right expectations. If people expect that things are going to be perfect, then you are absolutely screwing yourself.
Yeah.
And if you set the right expectations of this is going to be 80% accurate, do you still want to do this? And when it's 20% inaccurate, here's some of the things that might go wrong. Is that okay? And if it's not okay, well, instead of just doing AI, maybe we need AI plus an operations team who are going to QC anything that falls under certain parameters before it goes out to clients. So that's where you've got to have a as realistic of a business conversation that you can upfront, and from there, a lot of things will either become really interesting or not. I also think that a lot of data teams should be thinking about buying AI capabilities instead of building AI
Mhm.
capabilities. A lot of the SaaS software that are out there are better situated to invest more in solutions to help specific parts of your business than you are. So, for
Yeah.
example, you know, helping your team effectively use Gong or another call recording tool on sales in order to understand what's going on in your company is a better use of your time than trying to rebuild Gong or
Yeah.
another call recording tool. So just like too many people try to build everything when you probably should be buying a lot. And um, I was in a group of AI founders, and this is so totally anecdotal, but they don't see data teams as good partners. They for them, they don't see data teams as, "Oh, if I get in good with the data leader, they'll help me sell into the organization to apply my solution to the marketing team or wherever." They're just like, "Stay away from data people and go straight to the marketing people because at best, the data person is going to be able to say, yes, I want it, but then they might not even have a good relationship with the marketing person. And so it's just better to go straight to the marketing person. And it just adds extra complexity and everything to go to like the head AI officer, the chief of AI or whatever. Like that's the consensus right now in enterprise sales of people whose livings are dependent on how corporations work. Um, I think you could benefit a lot from doing the opposite and like go doing outreach to interesting companies and bringing them into your organization. I think there's a lot of value there.
Yeah. Interesting. I wonder, is it just that data people are too siloed? Is that what it is? You think? Or
I think that one of the things that AI is going to do is completely smash this. Okay, so I've got this phrase that I like to use called the primordial ooze of like data work, right? Because I was
okay.
around at the beginning when nobody, like the beginning of data science. Data science is now the sexiest job of the 21st century, but like
Mhm.
it was it was a hodgepodge. Nobody, no, like whatever we think right now is the data. Like right now, we've gone from the primordial ooze, which is, hey, we're going to combine some amount of software engineering and business analysis slash statistics and and like business knowledge and organizational acumen. Like we're going to combine those things together into this new job called data science. And you can use cloud computing, and you can use these new algorithms, these libraries. You could do a whole bunch of stuff, right? And everybody said, oh, this is way too vague. It's like the webmaster, right? Like, what does it mean to be a data person? We need to structure this more. Us data people, we like to structure things and organize things and have things be in database tables that have schemas and everything makes sense and connects to
Categories.
each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So let's have this data analyst and they do this, and then the data engineer does this, and then the data scientist does this, and then the ML ops engineer does this, and then we have data governance that does this, and then now we have analytics engineering that does this, and then we built this structure of what a lot of people, what I would say, what almost everybody thinks data work is now. We've built this structure, and everybody's saying, oh, like how is this structure going to exist when the foundation is shifting? And my answer is that the structure is not going to exist in the same way, but the primordial ooze that like that structure ended up coming from, that is going to be the same. It's going to be extremely valuable for companies to have individual people who can take business knowledge, software engineering, and data and statistics and AI knowledge and use that to go make money at companies. That's it.
Right.
So you're like, and already data titles are meaningless. What a data analyst is in one company is a data scientist in another company, is a data engineer at a third company. The titles have already always been meaningless, but this is going to make them even more meaningless. And I think too many people are stuck with what they think a data analyst is supposed to be. That's actually not what a data analyst is supposed to be. It never was. And one of the benefits of having been there since the beginning is I know how fake the whole thing is. And so I've never particularly cared. And yeah, that was a long rant, but I hope
No, that was amazing. Yeah, no, and honestly, so just like be adaptable and be willing to kind of flex in and out of those boundaries a little bit, I guess is what you're
the
saying. Because
objective
they're
function,
gonna go away, right? Like,
the objective function is making money. That's
mhm,
it. The objective, too many people have thought, oh, the objective function is to like be really good at moving data from here to here, or really good at like, that's the data engineering. And I don't want to do any of this other stuff. And other people have said, oh, I only want to do this. I don't want to do any of this other stuff. A lot of that has to go away. If you're
mhm,
generally good at combining those things and making money, you're going to have a very successful career. AI is only going to make things a lot better for you because you've got all of these new tools that you can go and use to make more money that used to be impossible. If I wanted to in the past, do certain like ICP segmentation, like imagine I just like pull your LinkedIn profile and I want to know, like, are you a good fit for this company to target or not? That used to be really complicated. Now I can
mhm.
go and pull annual reports and use the different AI software to judge how well of a fit you are and what are the best
Right,
messages to send you and what like you could build that stuff in a day or two now. It used to be take a team months. So if you're the kind of
right.
person that can do that to help a company make money, you're going to be in a good spot. But if you
Yep.
think that you're just going to keep in the very siloed way of doing data analysis, I think a lot of that is going to be challenged in a world of AI.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're seeing that already a little bit. Yeah. So we're running towards the end of the hour. I can't believe it's already flown by this quickly, but I've got a question from Sai here, which you answered partially, so I'll kind of take some of that out. But I actually was getting a question kind of on the side too that I think this goes nicely. So I'm going to put it up here on the screen. How do you balance between side projects and your day job? I know you talked a little bit about like whether or not you should do that and kind of like how to find that balance. But Sai's currently working on some side projects, and he finds it hard to keep pushing on the side hustle. I was wondering how, and again, I know you talked about kind of in the beginning a little bit earlier, like some of this like circumstance came upon you, and you're like, okay, now is the right time. But like, how do you stay motivated on something like that that maybe is something that you're working on a little bit on the side? What advice can you give to Sai on that? And then maybe as we transition out of that question, you can tell us a little bit more about reporting applications because I don't think we've talked too much about it, and like
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
some of that about what you do with your consulting.
Yeah. So, I think there's a difference between side projects and side hustles, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
side projects are generally pretty easy by design in that you can work on them when you want and then you don't work on them when you want. And so when you have a slow weekend or you wake up inspired early in the morning or whatever it is and you're just at night and you want to work on stuff, you work on your side project. And my side projects were very for side projects were very successful side projects. Like I built visualization system for US government data. So I built a visualization system on the US budget, which ultimately inspired the like official federal budget visualization of
That's awesome.
how they did it. And then I
Cool.
built a visualization system on campaign finance data where you could see who donated money to politicians. And I ended up with like 2 Harvard fellowships with it. Like it
Wow.
was like a reasonably successful side project.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
it just I still worked on it very part-time, and I took kinda years to do it, and that's the nature of the game. Like, it was a side project, it wasn't a full-time thing, and so I
Yeah.
think side hustles are tougher. When you have customers that are paying you, they want they want things immediately.
Mhm.
So but one of the best lines that I like, one of the best applauses I ever got at a talk was when I was presenting to a data group, like my one of my campaign finance projects, and I said that a lot of people get up and talk about, "Oh, I built this project in like 2 weeks." And like I said, "Actually, I built this project in 2 years. I didn't do it in 2 weeks. It took me like 2 years to get to where it was, and it was a lot of work, but like that's just how long it took." I got this huge applause because I think everybody has this expectation. They see that other people are doing things and it takes them no time and they have this massive success, and that's oftentimes not the way that it is. It takes time for
Right.
a lot of these things. So that is my answer. Side projects are easier to slow play than side hustles.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, just around the authenticity on social media. It's like everybody wants to pretend like, oh yeah, I just cranked this out over, a 2 week period or whatever, just in my spare time or whatever. It's like if it's something that's really valuable, it probably took some time. I would
Yeah.
guess, unless you just really struck gold and found some magic spark. So if, for instance, Sai is not feeling motivated, what could be your advice around motivation? Curious on your
Just don't
thoughts of
do
just
it
motivation in general.
until you feel motivated. Like
Take the
find
time.
like so listen, sometimes you're in a spot where you're like, "Oh, this bug is killing me," and you just want to grind it out. But in general, if you're not motivated to do something, take a break for a week or two and then come back later. And then if you still don't want to do it, ask yourself, "Do I want to keep doing this, or is there maybe something more exciting that I'd rather do instead?" And I like I've got kids, I've got other things, like sometimes other things in life are more important than side projects, and sometimes the side projects are the thing that I wanna focus on. This has been my experience. It's I've always found it tough to, um rely on like for side projects. For work, your work is your work. But
Right.
like for side projects, I find that it's always been more successful to sort of find a way to enjoy it. And then if you're not enjoying it, give yourself a break and then come back later when it's easier to enjoy.
Yeah. And if you're not enjoying it, to your point, is it the right thing? I think that's
Yeah,
fantastic
if you're
advice.
really not enjoying it. If you're just and if you like, "Ugh, I don't wanna do it today," then don't do it today. Do it tomorrow. It's okay. You know?
Right. Yeah. Especially when you're talking about a side project. If it's, your fitness, your health kind of stuff, sometimes you just got to do it, even if you don't like doing it. But
Sure.
to your point, if it's a side project, it should be something that gives you a lot of passion, and if it gives you a lot of energy, and it's driven by your passion. And if it's not, like you said, take a break, and if it's still not there, maybe it's time to move on to something else.
Yeah.
It's good, great advice. Tell us a little bit, kind of to wrap up the hour. Tell us a little bit about reporting applications. We haven't talked too much about it. Love to hear about it.
Yeah. Um, so I've been in this space of sort of like data products for a really long time. Products being like data, things that you sell, like what you sell is data, right? Like at Nielsen, what we sold was data. My job
Right.
before, I was building a lot of products where what we sold was data. Helium 10 selling data. Delivery Layer was a SaaS product that like built applications for selling data. And so what I found as like a SaaS product is that it was only sort of like a fraction of the market that had the shape of business that made sense for that tool. And so reportingapplications.com is just way more broad. It's like there's a lot of skills around building really good reporting applications. And I see the difference between a reporting application as just a general analysis or a dashboard as like um, repeatability mostly and like scale. So something that you are building for one person to look at occasionally is generally not a reporting application. Whereas like, some of the dashboards that are embedded into products, like with embedded analytics or like the Shopify dashboard, the Stripe dashboard, those are reporting applications. You've got a
Makes
lot of
sense. Yeah.
customers that are trying to use them. Or for internal teams where you're a management team and you're trying to decide the shape of the business and how you want to look at the business, and then have that be the central application that everybody looks at for their metrics. I think frankly there's been too many like OKRs that try to do this instead of like reporting applications. I think like having it be more of a reporting application framework is a better way to do this. But anytime that you're really looking for so that's what I do. I've got a lot of expertise in that, and so now I doing that more as consulting versus just the sort of technology side of the product.
Nice. No, that's awesome. It sounds really interesting. So people can learn more about that if they're interested in that. Reportingapplications.com.
Reportingapplications.com. If your company needs to build a reporting application for your customers, for your executive team, for your supply chain partners, for whatever, a lot of times it sits in this weird world between, IT, web development, and data teams and executives, and it's very messy. And we're just really good at this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in help, it's a consulting company. So we can build it, we can consult on it. There's a lot of different ways to get help.
Fantastic. And then if people want to just follow your work and your content and the other things that you do aside from that, where can they find you? Obviously, LinkedIn, other
Yeah,
places?
LinkedIn is the main place. Just follow Solomon Kahn on LinkedIn and check it out, and feel free to connect. And just mention that you saw me here, so I know that you're not a B2B lead generation specialist. Uh,
So
and
many of those.
and yeah, yeah, follow along.
Awesome. Well, Solomon, thank you so much, seriously, for doing this. This was a great hour. I think obviously super insightful, the stuff that you brought to this and really good answers to the questions. I hope everybody out there that joined us live, thank you very much for your questions. There were some great questions that came in, as well as anybody watching the recording, like I mentioned in the beginning. Thank you for sharing this time with us as well. Really appreciate it. As we move into the holidays, I hope everybody has a happy holidays. And again, thank you, Solomon, for being here. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, go check us out at datagoats.org and join the community and engage in the conversation. There's more events like this coming soon. Like as I mentioned in January, we have Maggie Wolf, who was here with a question, but that's today. So look forward to that as well. Thank you again, Solomon, for the time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care.
Take care.